The phone vibrated against my desk like an angry hornet, Linda Avery's name flashing on the screen. My fingers hovered over the reject button. Journalists were never bearers of good news. But something made me pause, maybe the same instinct that helped me write endings to my thrillers before I knew the middle. Holly Bennett? This is Linda Avery. I know you don't do interviews, but hear me out. We're doing a series on family secrets for our podcast, and your mother's name kept coming up. My throat tightened. Of course it did. Vivian Bennett, America's favorite lifestyle guru of the 90s, perfect mother, perfect host, perfect liar. Not interested. The words came out automatically, a defense mechanism honed over years. What if I told you we found Margaret Collins? The pen I'd been fidgeting with snapped in half, blue ink staining my fingers like bruises. Margaret, our former nanny, the only witness to what really happened behind the pristine walls of the Bennett household. She's willing to talk, Holly. About everything. I stood up, pacing my office past the wall of my published books, each one a thinly veiled attempt to exorcise my childhood demons. Why now? Because your mother's making a comeback. New lifestyle brand reality show, the works. She's selling the same perfect family narrative, and Margaret says she can't stay silent anymore. My father's voice echoed in my head from our last conversation. Sometimes the truth needs a spotlight, Holly, even if it burns. The podcast reaches millions, Linda continued. This could be your chance to. To what? Destroy my mother's career? Get revenge? To tell your story. The real story. I stopped at my window, staring at my reflection. At 31, I still saw traces of that terrified little girl in my eyes, the one who learned to smile for cameras while hiding bruised self-esteem under designer dresses. My therapist would say this is a terrible idea, I muttered. What do you say? The question hung in the air like smoke. My stepmother Rachel had always told me that healing comes from facing our demons, not running from them. But this wasn't just facing them, this was inviting them to dance. Send me the details, I heard myself say. I'll think about it. After hanging up, I called my father. Tom Bennett answered on the second ring, his voice carrying that permanent note of concern he'd developed since leaving my mother. Dad, remember when you said the truth needs a spotlight? What's happened? I explained about Linda's call, about Margaret, about the podcast. He listened in silence, and I could picture him running his hand through his silver hair, a habit from his professor days. Your mother will fight back, he said finally. You know how she operates. I'm not that scared little girl anymore. No, you're not. You're a warrior with a pen. But Holly. He paused. Make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. And what would those be? Healing, not hurting. Though sometimes they look remarkably similar. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and typed Vivian Bennett into the search bar. Her face filled the screen, still perfect, still poised, still lying through her expertly whitened teeth about our beautiful family dynamic in her latest interview. My phone buzzed again, Linda sending the podcast details. The episode would air live in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to decide if I wanted to tear down the facade my mother had spent decades building. I touched my screen, tracing the artificial smile I'd inherited and learned to hate. Game on, mother, I whispered. Let's see how your perfect life holds up under a spotlight. The box of childhood memorabilia sat on my desk like a ticking bomb. I'd retrieved it from the storage unit where I'd buried it along with other remnants of my past, telling myself it was research for the podcast. But my hands still trembled as I lifted the lid. The first photo made my stomach clench. There we were on national television, the perfect Bennett family. Mother in her signature pearl necklace, father in his professor's blazer, and me in a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. All of us smiling like we'd been programmed. Look at the camera, darling. No, tilt your chin down. You look fat when you hold it that way. Vivian's voice echoed in my head, precise as a surgeon's knife. I could still feel her fingers digging into my shoulder, arranging me like a doll while the makeup artist touched up my face. My phone rang. Rachel, my stepmother. Your father told me about the podcast, she said without preamble. Are you sure about this? I picked up a ribbon from one of Mother's Young Lady of the Year pageants she'd forced me into. You didn't see the good days, Rachel. The days when she'd actually seem proud of me. That's what made the other days so confusing. The good days were part of the manipulation, Holly. We both know that. I closed my eyes, remembering the afternoon I'd won first place in a writing competition. Mother had been ecstatic, parading me around at her garden party. My brilliant daughter, she'd called me. Then later, when the guests had gone, next time try not to slouch during your reading. You're not some common street performer. I found my old diaries, I told Rachel. Want to hear something interesting? I started writing thriller novels because they were the only books Mother wouldn't read. She said they were beneath her. And now you're a best-selling author in the genre she despises. That's not coincidence, is it? Neither is her comeback timing, I said, pulling out a newspaper clipping announcing Vivian's new lifestyle brand. She's launching right when my new book releases. She always did know how to steal the spotlight. Rachel's silence spoke volumes. She'd witnessed the aftermath of Mother's perfectionism. My panic attacks, my trust issues, my obsessive need to control my own narrative. The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the security camera, I saw Linda Avery standing on my porch, holding what looked like old VHS tapes. I have to go, I told Rachel. Linda's here. Holly. Rachel's voice softened. Remember what we talked about in therapy. Revenge might feel like healing, but it's not the same thing. I let Linda in, noting how she scanned my living room with a journalist's eye. You have your mother's taste in art, she said. I have her pieces facing the wall, I replied, pointing to the reversed paintings. It's my version of therapy. Linda smiled, setting the tapes on my coffee table. These are from your mother's first TV series. The unedited footage. Margaret kept them. My heart stuttered. Why would she? Insurance, maybe? Protection. Watch them before you decide about the podcast. I picked up the first tape, labeled Family Harmony Series, Episode 1 Raw Footage. There's something else, Linda said, pulling out her phone. Your mother's team reached out. They're offering a substantial amount to kill the podcast story. A laugh escaped me, bitter as old coffee. Of course they are. What did Margaret say? She said to tell you about the Christmas party. 1998. The room tilted slightly. That party, the night everything changed. The night I found Mother in her study, shredding what I now knew were Father's letters. The night she'd looked at me with such cold fury that I'd started plotting my escape. Tell Margaret I'll do the podcast, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But first, I need to watch these tapes. Linda nodded, heading for the door. One more thing. Your mother's launching her brand with a mother-daughter cooking show. She's been hinting to the press that you might appear as a guest. The audacity of it hit me like a physical blow. After 15 years of silence, she thought she could just script me back into her perfect family narrative? I turned to the wall of reversed paintings. Time to face forward, I whispered, reaching for the first frame. The VS footage flickered to life on my TV screen, grainy but clear enough to make my hands shake. Behind the scenes of Mother's famous Christmas special, 1998. The camera caught what the audience never saw. Mother grabbing my arm between takes, her manicured nails digging into my skin. Margaret, could you fix Holly's hair? She looks like she's been dragged through a hedge. Mother's voice, honey sweet for the crew, poison underneath. The doorbell rang, jolting me from the memory. Margaret Collins stood on my doorstep, 15 years older but still wearing that same concerned expression. You shouldn't watch those alone, she said, stepping inside. Her eyes found the paused image on the screen. That episode. I almost quit that night. Why didn't you? Because of what I found in your mother's study afterward. Margaret sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The letters from your father. My throat constricted. What letters? She reached into her bag, pulling out a bundle tied with faded ribbon. I made copies before she burned them. Your father wrote to you every week after the divorce. Not just Christmas and birthdays like she told you. The paper felt fragile in my hands. Dad's familiar handwriting swimming before my eyes. Dear Holly Bear, one began, using his old nickname for me. I miss you more each day. Your mother says you're too busy with pageants to visit, but I'll keep trying. There's more, Margaret said softly. That Christmas night, after you went to bed, I overheard your mother on the phone with her publicist. She was planning to use your eating disorder in her comeback story. America's Perfect Mother Saves Troubled Daughter. That was the pitch. The room tilted sideways. I'd never told anyone about those dark months, about the ways I tried to gain control when everything else felt chaos. My phone buzzed, a text from Linda. Vivian just announced her new show. She's using old footage of you too. Check social media. My hand shook as I pulled up the video. There we were cooking together in our matching aprons, looking like the perfect mother-daughter duo. The caption read, "Coming soon. Cooking with the Bennetts. A story of family, forgiveness, and finding our way back to each other." "She's using me again," I whispered, without even asking. "Holly." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "There's something else you need to know about your mother. Something I witnessed the night your father left." But before she could continue, my phone rang. Dad's number. "Have you seen it?" he asked, his voice tight with anger. "She's manipulating the narrative again, sweetheart. But there's something you should know before you do this podcast." "What is it?" "The real reason I left. It wasn't just the divorce. Your mother. She threatened to destroy my career if I fought for custody. Said she'd tell the university board about affairs I never had, students I'd supposedly harassed. She knew they'd believe her. America's perfect mother versus a nobody professor. The truth hit like a physical blow. All those years thinking Dad had chosen his new life over me when really, there's more," he continued. "Rachel found something in our old house when we were cleaning out the attic. Medical records. Your mother's psychiatric evaluations from before you were born. They diagnose her with." A sharp knock at my door cut him off. Through the security camera I saw her, Vivian Bennett herself, perfectly coiffed, camera ready as always. "Holly, darling." Her voice carried through the door. "We need to talk about this little podcast situation. I have a proposition that could benefit us both." Margaret grabbed my arm, her face pale. "Don't open it. You're not ready for her yet. Not until you know everything." I stood frozen between the door and the TV screen, still showing that long-ago Christmas, caught between past and present, between the scared little girl I was and the woman I'd become. "Holly." Mother's voice again, sweet as arsenic. "Don't make me handle this publicly, darling. You know how that always ends." I looked at Margaret, at the letters in my hands, at the paused image of Mother's perfectly masked cruelty. "Actually," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt, "I think it's exactly time we handled this publicly." Dr. Samuel Avery's office felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as I paced between his leather chair and the window. The psychiatric records from Dad lay open on the coffee table between us, each page a new revelation about Mother's past. "Sit down, Holly," Dr. Avery said, his voice steady. "You're making me dizzy. Did you know?" I spun to face him. "When Linda first approached me about the podcast, did you know your wife was investigating my mother?" He adjusted his glasses, a tell I'd learned meant he was choosing his words carefully. Doctor-patient confidentiality works both ways. "I couldn't tell Linda about you, just as I can't tell you about your mother's sessions with me 15 years ago." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "She was your patient?" "Holly." All those times I talked about her, spilled my guts about the emotional manipulation, the hidden letters, the eating disorder. "You knew her version already." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "Which is exactly why I referred you to another therapist back then. But you insisted on staying." A laugh escaped me, bitter and sharp. "Because you were the only therapist who seemed to truly understand what she was capable of." God, what an idiot I've been. "You're angry. That's valid. But ask yourself, is this anger about my past with your mother? Or about what you found in those records?" The diagnosis swam before my eyes. Narcissistic personality disorder with histrionic features. Documented cases of manipulation and emotional abuse in her own childhood. A pattern repeating itself through generations. My phone buzzed, another message from Mother, her third today. "The network loves the idea of us co-hosting. Think of the healing narrative, darling. We could help so many other mothers and daughters." "She's trying to control the story again," I said, showing Dr. Avery the message. "Using my pain to rebuild her brand. And you're not doing the same with this podcast?" The question hit like a slap. Before I could respond, his office door opened. Linda stood there, face pale. "Sorry to interrupt, but Holly needs to see this." She held up her tablet, showing a live stream of Mother on a morning show. My daughter and I have had our struggles, Mother was saying, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes with a tissue. Her father's abandonment affected her deeply, led to some serious issues with food and attention-seeking behavior. But I'm hoping this show will help us heal. The tablet clattered to the floor as my legs gave out. Dr. Avery caught my arm, guiding me to the chair. She's using my eating disorder, I whispered, just like Margaret said she would. There's more, Linda said quietly. The network wants both sides of the story. They're offering you a segment tomorrow morning. Dr. Avery's phone lit up, Rachel's number. He answered on speaker. Holly's with you. Her voice was urgent. Don't let her do the morning show. I found something else in the attic. Videos Vivian took of Holly as a teenager. She's been editing them, making it look like what? Like Holly was unstable, violent. She's building a defense, Samuel, in case Holly goes public with the truth. The room spun as another piece clicked into place. The psychiatric records, I said. She wanted me to find them, to see that mental illness runs in the family. She's discrediting me before I can expose her. Holly. Dr. Avery's voice cut through my rising panic. Whatever you decide about tomorrow, remember, she's expecting you to react exactly as she's trained you to. The question is, are you still that scared little girl? I stood up, legs steadier now, anger burning through the fear. No, I'm a writer, and it's time to tell my story my way. Even if it means burning every bridge? Linda asked. I thought of the letters from Dad, of Margaret's testimony, of the unedited footage showing Mother's true nature. Some bridges, I said, deserve to burn. My phone buzzed one final time, Mother again. Last chance, darling. Choose carefully. I deleted the message without reading further. The time for careful choices was over. The morning show's green room felt like a cage. Through the monitor, I watched Mother charming the hosts, her practiced laugh tinkling like broken glass. My segment would follow hers, separate interviews, her choice. Always maintaining control. Linda burst in, clutching her phone. You need to see this. Now. She pulled up an email from an anonymous source. Footage from Mother's upcoming show pilot. But instead of cooking segments, there were carefully edited clips of me. Age 16, screaming during one of our fights. 17, throwing a book across my bedroom. 18, crying hysterically after she'd discovered my food diary. She's been sitting on these for years, Linda said, waiting for the right moment. The door opened again. Margaret slipped in, looking haunted. Holly, there's something else. About your grandmother's death. My hands went cold. What about it? Your mother. She knew about the faulty brakes. She found the mechanic's warning notice 2 days before the accident, but she never told your grandmother. The monitor showed Mother dabbing at her eyes, telling the hosts about her dear mother's tragic accident, and how it made her determined to be the perfect parent. Why are you telling me this now? My voice sounded distant, strange. Because she's doing it again. Margaret handed me a manila envelope. These are recent brake inspection reports for your car. Someone requested them last week using your mother's old production company credentials. The room tilted sideways. Mother's voice filtered through the monitor. Sometimes tough love is the only way to save our children from themselves. My phone buzzed, Rachel. Don't go on air. Your father found something in Vivian's old study. Call me. But before I could, a production assistant appeared. 5 minutes, Miss Bennett. Linda grabbed my arm. Holly, wait. There's more to consider. No. I stood up, smoothing my dress. The same shade of blue Mother wore, her signature color. There's nothing left to consider. The podcast is tomorrow, Linda pressed. We can handle this methodically, present all the evidence. She's not going to stop, I said, watching Mother air kiss the hosts goodbye on the monitor. She'll keep twisting everything, using my pain to feed her narrative, just like she did with her own mother. Margaret touched my shoulder. Your grandmother's death was never proven to be anything but an accident. If you accuse her on live television, I'm not going to accuse her of anything. I pulled out my phone, typing quickly. I'm going to let her bury herself. The production assistant returned. 2 minutes. Your mother's asking to speak with you before you go on. Through the green room window, I saw her approaching, perfectly coiffed, camera ready. Our eyes met through the glass, and for a moment, I saw something flicker behind her practiced smile fear. I pressed send on my phone. Seconds later, her phone chimed. She read the message, her face going slack. What did you do? Linda whispered. Sent her the brake inspection reports. And a choice. I watched Mother's hands shake as she typed a response. Either she pulls the edited videos and cancels her show, or I go on air with the truth about grandmother. Holly. Margaret's voice wavered. That's exactly what she would do. The words hit like a physical blow. She was right, I was becoming my mother, using secrets as weapons, manipulation as armor. My phone buzzed with Mother's reply. You've learned well, darling. But remember, I taught you everything you know. The production assistant's voice. 30 seconds. I looked at the monitor, at Mother's perfect mask now back in place as she chatted with the hosts, at my own reflection in the green room mirror, wearing her color, playing her game. No, I said, stepping back from the door. I'm not doing this her way. Linda frowned. What are you thinking? I pulled out my phone again, this time dialing the podcast producer's number. Move the recording to today. Right now. No preparation, no perfect masks, no edited versions of the truth. But tell them to start streaming live in 15 minutes. It's time everyone saw what really happens when the cameras are rolling. Through the window, I watched Mother's face as her phone buzzed with the notification. For the first time in my life, I saw her mask crack completely. The podcast studio's red recording light blinked like a warning beacon. Mother sat across from me, her perfect posture a shield, her smile frozen in place as Linda began the live stream. Today we're discussing family secrets, Linda said into her microphone. And what happens when the perfect family image cracks? Mother's hand tightened around her water glass. Darling, are you sure you want to do this? Some stories are better left within the family. I pulled out the stack of hidden letters from Dad. Like these stories, Mother? The ones you burned. Her eyes flickered, the tiniest tell. Those difficult years after the divorce were difficult because you made them difficult. My voice cracked. You hid Dad's letters, edited my childhood videos, and now you're trying to use my eating disorder to promote your show. I protected you, she said, her tone shifting to the one she used for cameras, concerned, authoritative. You were so fragile after your grandmother's death. The grandmother whose brake inspection you ignored? The studio went silent. Mother's face drained of color, then reformed into something harder. Be very careful, Holly. You're not the only one with evidence. She reached into her bag, pulling out a USB drive. Remember that summer before college? Your little episode with the sleeping pills. My chest constricted. That was an accident. Is that what we'll hear in the emergency room recording? Or your therapy sessions with Dr. Avery, the ones I paid for? Linda started to interrupt, but Mother continued, her voice honey-sweet. Did you tell them about the night you threatened to jump from the balcony? How many times I had to save you from yourself? The room spun. She'd been recording everything all along, building her defense while pretending to help me heal. You didn't save me, I whispered. You created me. And you've done beautifully, darling. Your books, your success, all because I pushed you to be better. Now shall we tell your readers about the real inspiration behind your thriller heroines? About how many times Mommy had to cover up your little incidents? My throat closed. She was right. She documented everything, twisted every cry for help into ammunition, just like she'd done with her own mother. The live stream counter showed thousands watching, waiting, judging. Holly. Linda's voice seemed far away. We can stop. No. Mother's smile turned razor-sharp. Let's have the truth, shall we? About how my disturbed daughter is trying to destroy me, because she never learned to take responsibility for her own actions. My carefully gathered evidence felt worthless now. She'd turned my pain into my fault just like always, and thousands were watching me crumble. Tell them about grandmother's breaks, I said, my voice small. Tell them about the pills, she countered. About the nights you spent screaming that you hated me, that you wished I were dead. Like mother, like daughter. Isn't that what you're suggesting? The truth hit like a physical blow. She was right. I'd become her. Calculating, manipulative, willing to destroy everything for revenge. The live stream numbers kept climbing as I sat there, paralyzed by the reflection of myself in her eyes. My phone buzzed. Dad. Don't let her win. Remember who you really are. But who was I? The victim? The villain? The disturbed daughter or the righteous avenger? Mother reached across the table, her hand covering mine in a gesture that looked loving to the cameras but felt like handcuffs. Shall we tell them our truth, darling? Or should we stick to the story that sells? The red recording light kept blinking, witness to my surrender. In trying to expose her, I'd given her exactly what she wanted: control of the narrative, proof of my instability, and a live audience to witness my destruction. Well, Holly. Mother's voice dripped concern. What's it going to be? The USB drive sat between us like a loaded gun. My evidence against her life-destroying secrets about me. In the end, we'd both lose or both maintain the facade. Just like she'd planned all along. The studio lights flickered, signaling the 5-minute break. Mother reached for her water glass, her hand trembling slightly. The first real crack in her armor I'd seen in decades. Those recordings, I said quietly. You didn't just keep them to protect yourself, did you? She stiffened. Don't try to psychoanalyze me, Holly. That's what I paid Dr. Avery for. No, you kept them because you were scared. Just like your mother kept recordings of you. The glass froze halfway to her lips. What? I pulled out one final piece of evidence. An ancient cassette tape Margaret had found in grandmother's belongings. She recorded everything too. Your episodes. Your difficult phases. Sound familiar? Linda signaled 2 minutes until we were live again. Mother's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the table. You don't know what you're talking about. Play it, I said, sliding the tape across the table. Or I will. Her fingers closed around it, knuckles white. You wouldn't dare. Why not? Isn't that what you taught me? Use anything, hurt anyone, just keep control of the story. I taught you to survive. The words exploded from her, echoing in the sudden silence. The makeup artist who'd approached for touch-ups retreated quickly. 1 minute, Linda called. Mother's face crumpled for a fraction of a second before she caught herself. You don't understand what it was like being her daughter. The constant criticism, the public humiliation, the recordings. I finished. The threats? The manipulation. She looked down at the tape, then at her USB drive. 2 generations of pain, wrapped in magnetic strips and digital files. 30 seconds. We can stop this, I said. Both of us. Right now. And say what? Her laugh was bitter. That we're both damaged? That I became everything I hated about her? That you're becoming everything you hate about me? No. I reached across the table, not to touch her hand like she'd done for the cameras, but to take both drives. We say that it stops here. That we break the cycle. The red light blinked on. Mother's eyes met mine, wide with something that might have been fear or recognition. Welcome back, Linda began, but I cut her off. Before we continue, I said, standing up, I want to tell a different story. Not about victims and villains, but about patterns. About how hurt people hurt people. I held up both drives. These contain evidence. Secrets. Weapons we've gathered to destroy each other. Just like my grandmother did to my mother, and my mother did to me. Mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. But there's one thing these recordings can't show, I continued. The moment we choose to be better. To end the cycle. I walked to the studio's coffee station, where a metal trash can sat. Mother half rose from her chair. Holly, don't. The drives clattered into the can. I pulled out my lighter, the one I'd carried since my first failed attempt at running away at 16. Holly. Mother's voice cracked. Please. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw past the perfect makeup and practiced smile. I saw the scared daughter beneath, the one who'd learned the wrong lessons about love and protection. I forgive you, I said, dropping the lighter in. The plastic melted, taking our weapons with it. Not for you. For me. Because I choose not to be the next link in this chain. The studio sat in stunned silence. Mother's facade cracked completely, tears cutting through her makeup. I don't know how, she whispered. I don't either, I admitted. But maybe that's where we start. Linda leaned forward. Mrs. Bennett? Would you like to respond? Mother looked at the burning trash can, then at me. Finally, she did something I'd never seen before. She reached up and wiped away her tears, smearing her perfect makeup, not caring about the cameras. "My daughter," she said slowly, "is braver than I ever was." The red light kept blinking, witness to a different kind of truth than either of us had planned. The morning sun streamed through my office window, casting shadows across the wall of reversed paintings. One by one, I turned them around, Mother's perfect family portraits facing the world again. Not as lies anymore, but as reminders. My phone buzzed. Another message from a podcast listener. They'd been pouring in since the broadcast, but this one caught my eye. "Watched with my mother. We both cried. We're talking again after 5 years." A knock at my door. Margaret stood there holding a cardboard box. "Found these while cleaning out my attic. Thought you might want them." Inside were dozens of small items from my childhood. Hair ribbons, report cards, crayon drawings, things Mother had asked Margaret to throw away for being imperfect. "She called me yesterday," Margaret said, settling into my reading chair. "First time since I quit. She asked about the day you won the spelling bee. The one where I stumbled on stage? The one where you got back up and won anyway." Margaret smiled. She said she finally understands why that was more important than how you looked doing it. My laptop chimed. An email from my publisher. The subject line read, "New book proposal?" Below was my working title, "Perfectly Imperfect: Breaking the Cycle of Generational Trauma." Another knock. Dad and Rachel carrying coffee and bagels. "We saw Mother's announcement," Rachel said. "About canceling her show?" Dad nodded. "And about checking into therapy. Real therapy this time, not just for show." I touched one of the family portraits, tracing the frozen smiles. Dr. Avery recommended someone for her. Someone who specializes in generational patterns. "Are you ready for this?" Dad asked. "The real work starts now." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Mother's number. Not a text this time, a photo. Her sitting at her vanity, makeup removed, holding up her own childhood photo. The caption read, "Learning to face mirrors honestly. Both kinds." "She's trying," Rachel said softly. "We both are." I picked up one of my childhood drawings from Margaret's box. A family portrait in crayon, everyone holding hands. It's not about forgetting anymore, or even really forgiving. It's about understanding. Dad touched the drawing. "Your mother called me too. Asked about those letters she burned. She wants to know what they said." "What did you tell her?" "That maybe it's time to write new ones." I looked at my laptop screen, at the book proposal waiting for a response. The cursor blinked at the end of the title, waiting for more. Margaret stood to leave, pausing at my wall of thriller novels. "Will you still write them? Now that you've told the scariest story of all?" I thought about Mother's face in the studio when I burned the evidence, about how breaking things isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about making space for something new to grow. "I think," I said, "there are different kinds of thrillers. Some are about revenge. Some are about survival. And some are about the scariest thing of all, changing who we thought we had to be." My phone buzzed one final time. Mother again. "Having coffee tomorrow at that little place by your office. The one with the imperfect china you always loved. If you're free." I looked at Dad, at Rachel, at Margaret, my chosen family who'd helped me find my voice. Then at Mother's message, an invitation, not a command. A door cracked open, not a cage. I picked up my childhood drawing and pinned it next to my book covers. Perfect smiles replaced by crooked crayon lines. Both versions of the truth, both part of the story. "Tell her I'll be there," I typed back. "And tell her to come as she is. We both will." The morning sun shifted, illuminating the wall of paintings, books, and drawings. Different versions of the same story, finally learning to coexist. Not perfectly, but honestly. And maybe that was the better ending anyway.
I'm so glad you were born safe and sound. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything.
That's not true at all. Just having you here is enough for me. Now let's be happy together.
I felt extremely nauseous at her words, but I couldn't just leave like this. I finally reached for the door. I knocked lightly and opened it.
Hey, who do you think is the father of this child?
As I entered the hospital room, I reacted to Abby's words and looked up.
Huh? Who could it be? Someone we know. Right, Kate?
Nathan hurriedly interrupted our conversation with these words. Somehow both the imperious Abby and the flustered Nathan seemed ridiculous, and I spat out in disgust. Of course I know. Congratulations, I hope you're happy. Make that child happy together. Then I left Nathan behind and exited the hospital room. Surely divine retribution will fall upon them both. There's no future where they become happy after causing misery to others. I headed to a place to prepare a new future for them. My name is Kate Reynolds. I am a 37-year-old housewife. I was born and raised in a rural area. I have one younger sister. I grew up happily as the eldest daughter in a very ordinary family. After graduating from high school, I worked as an office worker at a local company. Not flashy, but I spent my days happily and seriously. And in the course of work, I was introduced to Nathan Reynolds, who would become my husband. Nathan was the son of the president of a client company. 3 years older than me, he seemed too good for someone like me. The executive who introduced me to Nathan told his father, the president,
Miss Kate is serious and precise in her work, and she's well liked by our clients for her kindness. If the executive who never praises anyone says so, she must be a wonderful lady.
My father-in-law Jason liked me from our first meeting, and so did Nathan, who came to like me, leading us to date and marry when I was 33 years old. I then retired from work to become a housewife. Everyone blessed me for this new beginning. However, there was one person who did not, my sister Abby. Abby is 10 years younger than me. My younger sister was the long-awaited second child, born after my mom underwent fertility treatments. Because of this, she was clearly loved and spoiled by our family. Of course, I also found Abby incredibly cute.
I want to eat pudding.
That's for your sister. You had some yesterday, didn't you?
It's okay. Let her have it. Thus, I often indulged her little whims from an early age. Consequently, Abby grew up to be the opposite of me, a skilled complainer, clearly expressing her opinions, both good and bad.
I hate hand-me-downs. They're ugly and I don't want to wear them.
In elementary school, she would refuse to wear the clothes I had outgrown, troubling our mother. Our family was not very wealthy, even by general standards. Even though I only wore hand-me-downs, I never complained, regardless of whether I liked them or not. Not that I thought Abby shouldn't complain, because I didn't, but learning to endure was also important, I believed. It's not ugly. Sure, it's a bit outdated, but the design is still wearable today. If I ever talked back, Abby would retort,
You don't realize it's ugly because you're out of style.
Indeed, I might not have been fashionable, but I treasured the new clothes I occasionally received, and my mother kept them clean and neat. Since I wasn't into flashy styles, my clothes were mostly basic items from unfashionable brands. I thought Abby could wear them just fine. But probably she just disliked the idea of wearing my hand-me-downs. Still, as sisters connected by blood, our tastes unknowingly seemed to align, as the things Abby would buy were often the same type and color as what I owned. Yet, because of Abby's cuteness, my parents and I ended up spoiling her. As she became a high school student, her whims became more and more unreasonable. She would demand pocket money, and if she wanted something, whether it was makeup or bags, she would buy it without hesitation. Every school was skipped if she didn't feel like attending, and she would go out at night whenever she wanted to play. By this time, not only did my parents indulge her, but they also scolded her on several occasions. We had to search for Abby in the middle of the night more than once or twice. Even if my parents refused to give her pocket money, she would sneak to our grandparents' house and coax some out of them unknowingly. No matter how much they lectured her or restricted her actions, Abby, who had always lived freely since childhood, did not change her ways.
It's my fault for spoiling Abby. What if she ends up dropping out due to truancy?
My mother felt responsible for Abby's actions, but Abby managed to graduate from high school and even secured a job. We were all relieved, but astonishingly, she quit the company after just 1 month.
There's a stinky old man there,
she said, offering a reason that hardly justified quitting. Afterward, she bounced between part-time jobs, quitting and starting new ones until she turned 23. Now an adult, Abby has settled down a bit in the past 2 years, working steadily as a part-timer. Perhaps she has learned a bit about personal responsibility as an adult. However, when I announced my marriage, she suddenly expressed a desire to quit her job.
Isn't it fair that only you get to marry the son of a president and become a housewife?
Ugh, I'm so jealous. That was Abby's first reaction when I shared the news of my marriage. Even as a housewife, I still have to do housework, and I plan to do simple company tasks at home without pay. Even when I explained this, the mere idea of quitting her job seemed to fill Abby with envy.
Housework is done quickly, and company work only takes a few minutes, right?
Even so, I can't just slack off.
That's right, and with your father-in-law being the company president, dealing with relatives must be tough, right? It seems like you'll hardly have any time to rest.
Mother took my side, but Abby wasn't convinced.
That's just enduring until my in-laws are gone. Jason is old anyway, and in a few years, you'll be president's wife, right?
What are you saying? I was severely displeased by Abby's words. Sensing my annoyance, Abby laughed loudly and said,
Just kidding.
But I wasn't in the mood to laugh, and my parents were also stunned by her remark. Everyone thought it was too much of a joke, but after a while, Abby actually quit her job.
I quit my job, so from tomorrow, I'll do the housework. Housewife.
She never even helped with chores at home, and now her sudden declaration had us all in a whirl. I was planning to get married and move out in a few months, but I felt terribly sorry for my parents who would have to live with Abby. I can't believe she actually quit her job. When I lamented, my parents just gave a wry smile.
I thought she had calmed down, but Abby is still a child at heart. It's okay for now, but what is she planning to do as she gets older without a steady job?
Even if it's about personal responsibility, the parents must be worried.
Well, I just hope Abby doesn't cause trouble for Kate. Right, you mustn't let Abby disturb your happiness.
In the end, I got married and left home without being able to do anything about the eager housewife Abby had become. Consequently, I was constantly worried about my family after my marriage. My in-laws were kind, and there was no inconvenience in our life, but as expected, being a housewife was challenging, with duties extending beyond household chores to preparing gifts for business associates and dealing with relatives. Although we lived separately, my mother-in-law Molly would often come to teach me how to manage our home, saying,
It must be hard marrying into such a family,
showing concern for me. No.
I understand it's hard because I went through it too, but let's take it easy and not push ourselves too hard. If we try too hard, we'll run out of breath.
With a smile, Molly taught me various things. There's a lot expected from me being their daughter-in-law, including interactions with my in-laws. Some friends said, It sounds tough, but Molly always cared for me and even prepared meals while I was busy learning the ropes. I was deeply moved by how fortunate I was to have such wonderful in-laws.
Both Dad and Mom are really happy that you became my wife.
Nathan also said that. Slowly I was becoming integrated into the family as a daughter-in-law. And 2 years after our marriage, I became pregnant with our first child. My in-laws were overjoyed. Nathan also seemed to look forward to the child's birth. However, contrary to this happiness, I had some concerns. It was about Nathan's suspicious behavior. He started taking his smartphone to the bathroom and had increasingly frequent visits entertaining, and recently the time he spent with me had decreased. Noticing that he was home less often, I became worried about his fatigue and once mentioned, You seem busy lately.
I'll be president soon. The constant calls and appointments are troubling.
However, Nathan responded as I expected and went back to his smartphone. Since becoming pregnant, I gradually felt more anxious about not having Nathan around. One day I suddenly thought that Nathan might be cheating. It happened when I looked at Nathan, who was always on his smartphone. His face seemed too happy for our work call. I felt uneasy seeing that expression.
I got a sudden call. I have to go out.
Sure enough, right after that expression, Nathan spoke to me. What? Now?
That president always calls suddenly. You can go to sleep.
Leaving these words behind, Nathan rushed out of the house. I thought it was unbelievable. What kind of emergency could there be at this hour? Waking up to the reality of a husband leaving his pregnant wife alone at night, I decided to hire a detective for the sake of our unborn child. A while after that, I received a call from my parents.
Abby has been taken to the hospital. Come quickly.
I was shocked by the call. Abby had been taken to the gynecology department, so I rushed to the hospital, thinking she might have an ovarian torsion. Is Abby's examination over? Is she okay? At the hospital, I found my parents in the waiting room and approached them.
Turns out she's pregnant. She's starting to go into labor.
What? I couldn't help but raise my voice at my mother's words. Didn't you notice before?
It seems Abby had regular checkups, but we didn't hear anything. I didn't notice much since I didn't show much during pregnancy either, and neither did Abby.
I instinctively touched my own stomach. Certainly, I'm not the type whose pregnancy is noticeable, but is it possible for one to go unnoticed by others until the due month? It's too late to say anything now, but soon after I heard the healthy cry of a newborn. My relief was short-lived as a new problem emerged: how to raise the child. Abby, an unmarried self-proclaimed housewife who isn't working, and the identity of the father was unknown. However, it wasn't the time to bring up such matters just after Abby had given birth. So after seeing the newborn's face, I went home. Abby had a baby. I told this to Nathan when I got home.
Is that so? Abby is a mom now?
Nathan seemed surprised, but smiled happily.
Can I go see them?
How about we go together this weekend? I only saw the baby's face today, so I'm planning to visit again properly.
That sounds good. I'll try to adjust my work schedule.
Nathan said this and immediately started fiddling with his smartphone. All his talk about adjusting work seemed like a lie, but I hoped that seeing Abby's child might bring about a change in him. That weekend, Nathan and I headed to the hospital where Abby was admitted. Just as we were about to enter the hospital, my phone rang. It was from the detective agency. It wasn't good to answer the phone while Nathan was with me. I hesitated for a moment, and Nathan spoke up.
Is that a call? Can I go ahead?
He seemed eager to see the baby, and I felt relieved. Yeah, I think the call will be quick, so I'll follow you soon. After saying this, I parted with Nathan and answered the phone. The call ended, and I headed to the hospital room with a heavy heart. Then, I heard voices from inside.
I'm so glad you were born safe and sound. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything.
That's not true at all. Just having you here is enough for me. Let's win happiness together.
Having just had that phone call, her words made me feel extremely nauseous. But I couldn't just leave like that. Bracing myself, I touched the door, knocked lightly, and opened it. Abby, how are you feeling?
And big sister, you came.
Of course. Nathan was holding the baby and looked happy.
I had a baby first, huh? He's healthy and cute, right? I wonder what your child will be like.
Indeed. Abby seemed to want to boast. I was annoyed by her tone, but responded briefly to avoid provocation. Then, perhaps frustrated that I didn't react poorly, Abby spoke more forcefully.
Hey, who do you think is the father of this child?
I reacted to her words and looked up.
Huh? Who could it be? Someone we know? Right, Kate?
Nathan hurriedly joined our conversation. Somehow, both Abby's bossiness and Nathan's fluster seemed ridiculous, and I spat out in disgust. Of course I know. Congratulations, be happy. Make sure you both make that child happy.
Kate?
I'm going home now.
You're leaving already? Wait.
As Nathan hurriedly placed the baby back on the bed and tried to follow me, Abby stopped him.
Well, if you already knew, then that's quick. Good for you, Nathan.
I am?
Nathan fumbled, held back by Abby's grip on his shoulders. Leaving him behind, I left the hospital room and headed straight to the detective agency. The call had been to inform me that they had gathered evidence. The detective hesitantly told me something even harder to say.
Actually, we've seen a woman who is familiar with the obstetrics clinic, located around 10 minutes west of your home, attending appointments with Nathan.
It was indeed the clinic where Abby had given birth. Although I had suspected, given Abby's history of coveting what was mine, the recent conversation confirmed it. Without a doubt, Nathan had been having an affair with Abby. After receiving the evidence from the detective office, I went to my in-laws' house. Nathan has had a child.
Had a child? What do you mean? It's not time for our grandchild to be born, right?
My in-laws looked puzzled by my words. Yes, it's not my child. Please look at this. I presented the evidence received from the detective office. As my in-laws examined it, their faces gradually paled. After realizing everything, they were apologetic.
I can't believe this is happening.
She was crying, almost banging her head on the floor. Mother, please lift your head. I'm not asking for an apology from you two, but I cannot forgive Nathan. I think I will be filing for divorce.
That's understandable. A wonderful woman like you should not be saddened, and honestly, we cannot forgive him either. We're truly sorry. We will do whatever we can to help you.
Thank you. I felt profoundly grateful that my in-laws were understanding. The divorce seemed likely to proceed smoothly. After our conversation, their anger was directed towards Nathan.
What was Nathan thinking? Doing something like this? I'm going to call him right now.
As Jason said this, he immediately started dialing Nathan's number. The moment the call connected, he shouted angrily.
I've heard everything from Abby. What is this all about? Come here and explain yourself. It's a misunderstanding. Listen to me.
Nathan sounded frantic on the other end of the phone. His voice leaked from the smartphone in such a pathetic way that I couldn't help but smirk, though my in-laws were not amused.
All right, I'll hear everything, but come here quickly. I'm sorry, I'll come right away.
His voice sounded almost tearful, like a child being scolded. Imagining his expression, I chuckled to myself. Not wanting to face Nathan, I went home after that. Once home, I immediately began packing. The house was a wedding gift from Jason, and Molly had furnished it for me. I was getting divorced and moving out, but I didn't want Abby to take over the gifts for my in-laws. When I shared my feelings with them, they said,
Of course, we gave you that house and furniture because they were for you, Kate.
But I understand if you don't want to live there. I have an apartment closer to the station. You should move there for now.
Thank you. With the help of my in-laws, I quickly arranged for a moving company and relocated. It seemed Nathan was being forced to reflect on his actions at his parents' home and wasn't allowed to go to work. Molly kept me updated on his situation. About a week later, I finally received a call from Nathan.
Kate, I finally got a chance to call. Mom took away my smartphone. What do you mean by getting a divorce?
What do you mean, what? You have a child with another woman. How can we possibly continue our marriage?
It was just a fling with Abby. I didn't think she would get pregnant. Anyway, I'm on my way home now. Let's talk. Please, don't leave. Stay there.
Nathan hurriedly hung up after speaking, but I laughed to myself. I had already moved out. Which home was he heading to? Predictably, I received another call from Nathan a few minutes later.
What's going on? Why is there no house?
I couldn't help but laugh at his bewildered voice. I've already sold the house. And the new owner plans to turn it into a parking lot.
How can you just do that? That house is in my father's name.
Of course, I got permission. That day when you came home, I also disposed of your belongings. So your house doesn't exist anymore. Just go back to your parents' house. After my move, Jason sold the house. I was grateful to him for going to such lengths. And as I told Nathan, the new owner was indeed planning to turn the site into a parking lot, and the house had been demolished a few days later. I even went to see it. I thought I might feel a bit sad, but watching the house being torn down felt cleansing.
So, can we really never go back?
He must have been standing on the now empty lot. His voice was weak and desperate. He was such a bad finisher, always pleading. If he regretted it so much, he shouldn't have cheated me in the first place. Stop being so persistent. Just reflect on it at your parents' home. Nathan probably ran away from his parents' scolding, but now he had nowhere else to find peace. He had destroyed that himself. That night, my parents also contacted me.
Abby is saying that Nathan is the father of her baby. That must be a mistake, right?
Apparently, Abby had been claiming this since her discharge from the hospital, but my parents had ignored it, thinking it impossible. However, since she hadn't stopped insisting for several days, my mother, now seriously doubting, contacted me. I'm sorry to ask this, but it's true. I'm planning to divorce Nathan.
Oh, that's terrible.
I've informed Nathan's parents and they're helping me prepare a new place. We're going to discuss the divorce. My mother seemed to be crying on the other side of the phone. Abby was apologizing repeatedly and I felt tears welling up as well. My mother had no reason to apologize. It was Abby's actions that she felt responsible for. Despite being an adult, Abby probably can't imagine that her actions are causing sadness to those around her. Mother, don't worry about anything. After reassuring my parents, I ended the call. Then, with my in-laws present, I began the divorce discussions.
It was my fault. I got carried away by Abby's temptation.
Nathan seemed reluctant to divorce, apologizing repeatedly, but his words did not move me. If you feel sorry, will you marry Abby?
But
she's had the baby. Abby can't raise it alone. Take responsibility. Nathan was silenced by my words. Jason sighed deeply.
We will support Kate and the child that's been born. You take responsibility and fulfill your duties to Kate's sister and the child.
Under pressure from both me and his father, Nathan reluctantly signed the divorce papers. I hoped he would reflect on how his actions had led to this outcome. After our divorce, Nathan remarried Abby and started living with his parents. Having no house left, he had no choice but to live with them. By the time I was nearing the end of my pregnancy, I was living comfortably in the home prepared by my in-laws.
Sorry for stealing Nathan from you.
Abby sent me that message, but I ignored it. Dealing with Abby now could stress me out, which would be bad for my health. But probably that's exactly what she wanted.
Guess what kind of kid your sister will have? It's funny because they will be cousins, but almost like siblings. Well, I'm younger and prettier, so my child will surely be better.
She kept sending messages like this, completely disregarding others' feelings.
By the way, I haven't received a baby gift from you.
Even more so, she had the nerve to say that to me, knowing I was going to be a single mother, which really got on my nerves. Are you home right now? I'll come over right away. Despite having ignored her until now, I replied to her message about the baby gift and headed to Nathan's house right away. Kate, how are you feeling? Molly had continued to care for me warmly even after the divorce. She welcomed me warmly into the house that day. Is Abby here?
Nathan is off today too, so they're probably here.
Molly hesitated a bit, careful with her words. I smiled and said, Great, I brought a baby gift for Abby and Nathan. Once inside, I sat in the living room while Molly called Abby over. Abby, holding the baby and looking blissful, laughed at me mockingly, unaware that she was about to be cast down into turmoil.
You finally brought the baby gift? Well, I'm not short on money.
To Abby, who had made such a remark, I handed a thick envelope. It was bulky, but something you'd expect to contain cash, making Abby frown in confusion.
What is this?
I wasn't going to give this, but this is my gift to you. As I gently handed the baby to Nathan and passed the envelope to her, Abby's face turned pale as she looked through the papers and sighed.
What is this? What does this mean?
She then screamed loudly, glaring at Nathan. Nathan peered curiously at the documents Abby was holding, and turned pale as well.
I don't know anything about this. It wasn't me.
It's obviously you, Nathan.
I couldn't help but smile at their exchange. The envelope actually contained investigation documents from a detective. I had shown them to my in-laws already, but they contained shocking truths unknown to Abby. It turned out that Nathan's affairs weren't just with Abby. He had 4 mistresses in total. Abby was the third in line. The first affair appears to have been a double affair with a subordinate's wife, whom Nathan was seriously involved with. According to Molly, the husband eventually found out, and the marriage to Abby was the catalyst that finally ended it. The second was a 20-year-old girl he met on an app, not Abby. He was seen entering the obstetrics clinic with her, apparently for an abortion, according to the detective. The third was Abby. The fourth was one of Abby's friends, who she had introduced to Nathan. I knew all this, but to me, Nathan was now a stranger. Having any relationship with multiple women was bad enough, but involving my sister made it unforgivable. I would have buried this dark secret if Abby had sincerely apologized and refrained from trying to one-up me. However, since she couldn't stop, I decided to knock her off her pedestal.
This is terrible! You liar!
As expected, Abby began crying and lashing out in hysterics. Despite holding her adorable child, she repeatedly cursed and lunged at Nathan.
What is all this noise about?
Just then, Jason returned home. He seemed a bit pleased to see me and said,
Kate, you're here.
Then he glared at Abby and Nathan.
What are you two doing shouting in front of the baby?
Jason, listen, Nathan has...
Oh, if it's about Nathan, they both already know everything you're going to say. I grinned at the panicking Abby.
That thing.
He spoke with a look of disbelief.
After all, Abby, it was before your marriage, and you're just the same. You were complicit in the affair, so do you even have the right to blame Nathan?
I think only Kate has the right to blame Nathan.
Abby bit her lip in frustration as her own parents didn't take her side.
Also, I've prepared a new house for the three of you to live in.
What?
Abby's eyes briefly lit up at the father-in-law's words, despite her furious state.
I negotiated the rent down to $800 a month. It's a friend's company, so they cut down $30 for us. Please move out quickly.
At those words, Abby's face fell into despair again.
Wait, what do you mean move out? And why do Kate get a new house, while we get a rental, with rent to pay? I've also prepared a new job for you. It's in sales at a real estate company.
A new job?
Are you kicking me out of the company? I was supposed to be the next president.
The couple then confronted the father-in-law, but he smiled and said,
When did I ever say you were going to be the next president? You just assumed that. Besides, I can't keep someone in the company who has affairs with employees' families. Pack your things quickly.
The couple who had been arguing now united in their protest against Jason. I watched in disbelief, but Molly murmured beside me,
Ever since Kate and Nathan divorced, the father planned to kick him out. Both the father and I think of Kate as our true family.
I was overjoyed by her words, and I silently laughed at the divine retribution my sister and her husband were facing. They moved into the house Jason had prepared for them. It was a 15-minute walk from the station. However, it was next to a pediatric clinic and only a 3-minute walk to the supermarket, ideal for raising children. My parents told me Abby was complaining about not being able to go out, but she would surely spend recklessly if given the chance. I hope she tries her best in parenting in the house Jason found for the sake of their grandchild. Nathan was under Abby's thumb, working uncomfortably in sales at a real estate company, which, ironically, was managed by a relative of the subordinate he had an affair with. Whether the company knows about Nathan's misconduct or not, he must feel quite constrained there. Moreover, with the compensation payments, Abby couldn't live the lavish life she desired. It was a life neither Abby nor Nathan could have imagined, but it was the situation they had brought upon themselves. Above all, I hope they make their child's happiness a priority. After that, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both my parents and in-laws adore him. Though my bond with my in-laws was severed, I still lived in that apartment, keeping in touch. I worked remotely for Jason's company, which had previously been unpaid. Now employed there, I earned enough to raise my child on my own. I might have been playing, but I've always valued people and acted with integrity, and I believe that's why I ended up where I am. Though I wasn't lucky with my husband, I was blessed with a very cute son. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to work from home while raising him.
Retirees acting all high and mighty. Don't you dare come to my wedding. Alyssa laughed mockingly as she said this, ridiculing me. Far from stopping his daughter, Frank joined in the laughter. Why do I have to be subjected to such treatment? Was all the time we spent together meaningless? Is that really your wish? Of course. The ceremony would be ruined if that old hag showed up. Having reached my limit, I decided I could no longer hold back. If that's what they want, I'll let them have it. Perhaps I was never truly a part of their family from the start. Then, I turned to them with a smile. With pleasure. At that, they both looked taken aback. Leaving them behind, I contacted my parents. Sometime later, on the day of the wedding. As I relaxed at my parents' home, I received a call on my smartphone. The caller was Alyssa. Seeing her name, I answered the phone with a smile. This is all your fault. You had to meddle. Take responsibility. I couldn't help but suppress a laugh at Alyssa's frantic voice. I am Debbie Hansen, a 53-year-old part-time housewife. I've always struggled with anger, always enduring silently. Whether my brother took my toys or a friend broke a promise, I always bore it in silence. Debbie is such a kind child. But it's okay to say no if you dislike something, you know? That's right. Sometimes it's important to express anger. But Debbie is truly a kind child. My parents praised me like this and were always the ones to get angry on my behalf. They would lecture my brother and encourage me to have proper discussions with my friends. Growing up under their care made me hope to build a family like theirs one day. For your information, I have an older brother and a younger sister. Debbie, I'm going shopping. Need me to pick up anything? I'm good, thank you. My brother Ryan was quite rough as a child but has become a reliable figure. After being scolded by our parents numerous times and seeing my rare outbursts. However, his tendency to act rashly was his only flaw. Thankfully, his wife keeps him in check. And they have built a warm family blessed with a talented son. Brother doesn't get it, huh? Asking sister won't get you any answers. On the other hand, my sister Tracy was surprisingly smart for someone our parents also raised. As a child, she frequently followed me around asking, "What's this? What's that?" Over time, the roles reversed, and her intelligence even amazed me and my brother. She seems to have a partner she lives with, but she has chosen to live freely without marrying. Well, to each their own. Build your own kind of family. Despite choosing different paths, our parents have always warmly supported us. As for me, I am also married. I have a daughter, but there is no blood relation between us. My husband, Frank, was a divorced single father when we married. According to him, his ex-wife had cheated and left. And then, I was told that his daughter was in middle school at the time. Hearing that, I honestly hesitated, but then Alyssa said, "I always wanted a mom like you, Debbie." That single statement made up my mind. I will become your mother, Alyssa. Thank you, Debbie. So, I chose to be her mother. Frank thanked me repeatedly, and Alyssa, with a full smile, was delighted. With these two, I felt it would be okay. Striving to build our own family, I struggled every day. Soon after marrying Frank, Alyssa's attitude changed. "Hey, maid. Wash my clothes." Alyssa began referring to me not as a mom but as a maid, and started ordering me around. Hold on, Alyssa. I'm not a maid, and you shouldn't speak so rudely when asking for something. Don't talk back, maid. Just quietly do as I say. Alyssa was clearly defiant. Was the girl who sweetly asked me to be her mom just acting? Maid, huh? That's a good expression. Instead of scolding Alyssa, Frank only laughed. Realizing this couldn't continue, I waited until Alyssa was asleep to talk to Frank. Hey, Frank. Don't you think Alyssa's attitude towards me is awful? Is it? Is it? I'd like a little support here. You're just laughing along with her. Frank responded with a troubled smile and then apologized. She's just going through adolescence. It can't be helped. I'm sure she'll change once she calms down. Please wait until then. I think she's probably wary of the mother figure. Told this, I fell silent. True, her way of speaking was harsh. But Alyssa was essentially abandoned by her biological mother. On top of that, during her complicated teenage years, a stranger became her mother. Despite her asking me to be her mom, perhaps she couldn't accept it so easily. Thinking this, I decided to endure until she calmed down. I'll support you as best I can. Frank said this, which encouraged me to keep trying. However, she never seemed to settle down. The food is awful. The cleaning isn't thorough. I don't like how you fold the clothes. and so on. She complained like a mother-in-law every day, and gradually, I became worn out. I'm really sorry. But once she gets married, she'll move out. Then it'll be just the two of us, living quietly. Just bear with it for now. I hung on to those words from Frank. Still, I must have looked tired. Sis, can we talk for a bit? My sister, who worked at the same place, approached me. You look tired. Is your marriage not going well? I chuckled bitterly at her words. Realizing I couldn't hide it, I decided to vent a little. She's really taking liberties, huh? Maybe you should stand up for yourself more. She's having a tough time. When I said that, she replied, Sis, you're too lenient. I just smiled wryly. She's always been straightforward. Well, I shouldn't get too involved in this. Saying that, my sister stepped back. Still, she added, but if anything happens, make sure you talk to me. Thanks for listening. I feel a bit lighter now. Feeling a bit more at ease, I thought about how to interact with Alyssa moving forward. Getting Frank's cooperation was key. I decided to talk to him when I got home. Despite my hopes, Alyssa's attitude did not change. Hey, old hag. I'm going out with friends, so give me some pocket money. It seemed to have worsened. Since entering high school, she had repeatedly asked for money. And her way of addressing me shifted from maid to old hag. Frank, about Alyssa. You need to talk to her too. Stop nagging. I consulted Frank many times. Initially, he said, sorry, and it's just for now. But his attitude changed completely after he learned I had vented to my sister. Alyssa disrespects you because you're not making enough effort. But I've tried to be close to her. But she won't listen to me. That's why I want you to. What, you're saying it's me and Alyssa's fault? You're terrible. Saying that, he started playing a mobile game. He completely stopped listening to me. Lately, just mentioning Alyssa's name would provoke him. Don't tell me. It's none of my business. Just focus on your chores and work. These days, I found myself holding my head in frustration. Still hoping, I tried to bring up Alyssa today. Old hag, give me some money. I don't want to eat your food, so I'm going out. Alyssa had just returned. She threw her bag on the table roughly and extended her hand as if demanding money immediately. Didn't I give you pocket money just recently? Besides, I make food considering your health. Also, please treat things with care. Your lectures are just noise. Even as I tried to admonish her, she responded with an annoyed look. In desperation, I looked to Frank for help. You're the mother, right? Then listen to your daughter. Those words hit me like a shock. I froze, feeling betrayed, while Alyssa, for the first time in a while, smiled broadly. Dad gets it. But this old hag isn't my mother. That might be true. Frank laughed at Alyssa's words. The man I met as a business partner, who was once kind and considerate, had changed. And when he invited me to dinner, talking about Alyssa. My wife cheated and left us. Both my daughter and I were deeply hurt, he had said. He had disclosed his divorce and daughter's situation early, making me believe he was sincere. I decided to marry him, wanting to support him. But now, he and Alyssa disregarded me, laughing together. Alyssa, I'll treat you to some good food. Yay! Oh, clean this up. While I stood there dumbfounded, the two of them left. Left alone in the living room, I picked up my phone. The first contact I pulled up was my reliable brother's. No, it might cause him to act rashly. My brother would surely try to help, but he might overreact. My sister was recently put in charge of a major project and seemed too busy to bother. I didn't want to worry my parents about my situation either. So, I decided not to make the call. Just a little longer. Just a bit more patience. Once Alyssa gets married and moves out, Frank will surely change. He'll apologize for everything and start listening to me. With that hope, I chose to endure. Alyssa then went on to college. How's college?
Meh.
I'm not particularly interested in learning anything, she said, spending her days hanging out. She constantly asked for money and came home late. I wish she could just live on her own. That's what I was thinking when I returned home. You're back? Oh, you startled me. For some reason, Frank was home. His job at a major corporation usually keeps him busy, and he generally comes home later than I do. So, I didn't expect him to be there and was momentarily frozen in surprise. What are you doing here? I've switched to remote work. I see. While responding, I felt a rare moment of connection like we used to have. Lately, I've been too irritated to even initiate conversation. Oh, Dad's home. At that moment, unusually, Alyssa came home early. She seemed surprised to see her father but smiled happily when she heard about his remote work. Does that mean you're so competent that you get to work remotely?
Yeah.
Well, yes. Frank nodded, somewhat flustered. Recently, Alyssa hadn't been smiling or talking much to Frank either. So his confusion was apparent when she suddenly spoke to him with a smile. Compared to that, the old hag is useless, huh? Alyssa laughed mockingly as she turned to me. My uplifted spirits immediately plummeted. Disappointment also washed over me when Frank joined her in laughter. My job requires me to be on site. So, you mean the old hag can only handle that much? I'm glad Dad is so capable. From then on, Alyssa mocked me even more. Whenever we met, she would say, useless old hag. Or, you'll probably get fired soon and live off a pension. Moreover, Frank began to mock me too and stopped contributing to the household expenses. There's no money for you. Earn it yourself. My complaints fell on deaf ears. After graduating from college, Alyssa didn't get a job and only worked part-time occasionally. Frank was home but did nothing around the house. The burden of work and chores was accumulating, and I was growing increasingly tired. The thought of divorce began to cross my mind. I'm home. Dad, guess what? One day, Alyssa came home in a great mood. Apparently, she had decided to marry her boyfriend. Hearing this, I felt a slight hope that Alyssa would finally move out. So, I want to have a grand wedding. But since his side is paying for the new home and honeymoon, they asked if we could split the wedding costs. Frank looked at me as Alyssa said this. Given how lenient Frank usually was with Alyssa, I was puzzled, expecting him to readily agree to cover the wedding expenses. That's great. Will you introduce us to your fiancé? We shouldn't waste time introducing him to the old hag. But I want to show him off, so I'll let you meet him. And so, I was granted a chance to meet Alyssa's fiancé. Debbie, can I talk to you for a moment? That evening, after Alyssa went to her room, Frank asked me for a favor. Despite some hesitation, I agreed. The day Alyssa brought her fiancé home finally arrived. Oh? I was startled to see him, and he seemed just as surprised. Nice to meet you. I'm Brian Smith, engaged to Alyssa. However, he soon acted as if it was our first meeting, so I responded in kind. The meeting went smoothly, and by the end, Frank seemed to have taken a liking to him. In a good mood, Frank pulled out a checkbook. Use this for the wedding expenses. Thank you. What, $30,000? Wow, thanks, Dad. As the two expressed their gratitude, Frank's mood improved even further. After exchanging contact information, Brian left. He seems like a good person. Take good care of him. Why are you acting all high and mighty? You're not involved. Not involved? I inadvertently looked at Alyssa, and she directed a cold gaze back at me. Are you satisfied now? Can we leave it at that? Wait a minute. What do you mean by that? Exactly what I said. I don't want the old hag at my wedding, so don't attend. Stunned by her words, I lost my voice for a moment. Even though I wanted to attend as her mother, she harshly replied, "You're not my mother." But I've raised you as a mother all these years? Retirees acting all high and mighty. Don't you dare come to my wedding. Alyssa laughed mockingly as she said this, ridiculing me. Far from stopping his daughter, Frank joined in the laughter. Why do I have to be subjected to such treatment? Was all the time we spent together meaningless? Is that really your wish? Of course. The ceremony would be ruined if that old hag showed up. Having reached my limit, I decided I could no longer hold back. If that's what they want, I'll let them have it. Perhaps I was never truly a part of their family from the start. Then, I turned to them with a smile. With pleasure. With that, both of them looked dumbfounded. Leaving them behind, I contacted my parents. They immediately accepted me back. So I packed my bags and returned to my parents' house, thinking they deserved to learn their lesson. After a while, it was the day of the wedding. I knew today was the wedding day from the bragging emails I received from Alyssa and Frank. I bet they're having a tough time now. As I relaxed at my parents' house, I received a call on my smartphone. The caller was Alyssa. Seeing her name, I answered the phone with a smile. This is all your fault. You had to meddle. Take responsibility. I couldn't help but suppress a laugh at Alyssa's frantic voice. What are you laughing at? How are you going to take responsibility? Calm down. I can't understand what you're saying. Don't joke with me. Alyssa continued to scream, now uttering words that made no sense. Hey, it's me. Then, the voice on the phone changed to Frank's. Apparently, none of the groom's relatives showed up. And the groom suddenly played an audio recording. The content was a recording of the two of them berating me. And then, to those who came to the ceremony, he declared, "I do not wish to marry someone like this, so the engagement is off. You were the only one who could have recorded that audio. That was your doing, wasn't it?" Frank's voice contained anger. He was trying to stay calm and hear me out. Indeed, I was the one who passed on that recording. Having considered divorce, I had consulted a lawyer friend. He advised me to record their derogatory comments, and I had recently recorded their latest insults. This time, I had given a copy of that recording to Brian. I had to protect my dear nephew from people like you. I could tell that time stopped on the other end of the phone. After a few seconds, Frank spoke in a strained voice. Nephew? Yes, the groom, Brian Smith, is my nephew. Well, you never bothered to learn about my relatives, so maybe you didn't know. Indeed, my shock at the introduction was because he was my nephew. I heard Alyssa's voice exclaim, "That's a lie." It seemed they had put me on speaker. It's true. His voice came through, with my nephew Brian next to me. Actually, he was with me when I answered the call. And I had put it on speaker to let him hear everything. Why is Brian there? I'm not marrying you, and I already said I was leaving, right? I've already informed the staff, so there's no problem. Brian explained in a cold voice. Hearing his voice for the first time in that tone, Alyssa, who had been yelling nonstop, fell silent. Honestly, I'm disappointed in you. Oh, and just so you know, another aunt came up with this plan, and I agreed. In fact, Aunt Debbie tried to stop it. To neglect such a kind mother is unthinkable. You're the worst. With that, Brian hung up the phone. Then, smiling, he said, yes. I also responded with a smile. When I arrived at my parents' house that day, my parents and siblings were there to greet me. What a situation. Not interfering because it's a complicated family was a mistake. Sorry, we should have paid more attention. When I told them what had happened, everyone was angry at Frank and Alyssa's actions. They also said I should have consulted them sooner. While smiling wryly, I looked at Brian, my brother's son who was with me. Aunt Debbie. I'm returning this. With that, he handed me the checkbook with the $30,000. By that point, he must have decided not to marry. It also serves as severance. Please use it for the wedding expenses. However, as an aunt, I cannot endorse a marriage with her. Please tell me more about Alyssa. I then detailed the treatment I had endured from her. This made my family even angrier. During this, Brian pondered with his eyes closed. I will annul the engagement. Having made his decision, he asked about Alyssa's usual demeanor. She is kind and considerate on the surface. That's why she has many friends, and many are deceived by her. That means if we break off the engagement unilaterally, she might spread strange rumors. Her facade might be inherited from Frank. After all, I was completely fooled into marrying him. How about this? Then, my sister came up with a plan to reveal her true nature at the wedding. Honestly, I wondered if it was right to do such a thing at an important wedding. But everyone, including Brian, agreed. Sis, do you have anything that could be useful? Responding to her, I brought out the recordings. After reviewing the content, my sister frowned and made a copy for Brian. Then kept the original herself. Then, please handle it on the day. So, on the wedding day, everyone except Brian would be absent to prepare various things. My sister passed the audio to the lawyer I had consulted, who was her live-in partner, to prepare for the divorce. Is it okay to move all the new furniture? Yes, please do. My brother and I decided to prepare for the move together. Most of the furniture and appliances in that house were purchased by me. So, we took them with us to our new home. After fulfilling our respective roles, we were having a thank you gathering at our parents' house. You need to be better at judging character. I'm truly embarrassed. We all listened to the recent exchange between Alyssa and the others. Now that Brian has done his part, it's my turn. Holding the divorce papers, I muttered. All my patience might have been for nothing. But I knew I couldn't stay with him any longer. I'm coming with you. So it's going to be okay. Hearing my mutter, my brother reassured me. He really is reliable. Thank you. Just, don't go overboard, okay? I know. I'm coming too. I was truly grateful to have my siblings. With these dependable too. I was able to laugh from the bottom of my heart for the first time in a long while. Later, my brother, sister, and I visited that house. We had keys, but I rang the doorbell anyway. Debbie. What on earth are you thinking? Frank, angry, came out and went pale when he noticed my brother. My brother works in construction and is well built. Frank, who is all flab with no muscle, stood no chance. It seems my sister has caused you a lot of trouble. As my brother cracked his knuckles and glared, Frank stammered and averted his eyes. Let's talk properly, shall we? With a smile, I said that to Frank. Then, we entered the house. Oh, you. How dare you show your face here? It's all your fault everything turned out so badly. Inside, Alyssa was there and started yelling at me as soon as she saw me. After everything that's been recorded and the ordeal she went through. Does she not learn? I've got that on tape now. Saying so, my sister showed Alyssa the recording screen of her smartphone. Alyssa fell silent with a demonic expression. About the audio Brian played at the wedding. The original data has been handed to a lawyer. The lawyer said we could claim damages. Wait. Anything but that? Interrupted by my words, Frank, who had been silenced by my brother's glare, spoke in desperation. He was begging me, please spare me that. Alyssa looked at her father with a puzzled expression. Well, you'd be in trouble, wouldn't you? Since you've been laid off. Frank's face turned even paler when I spoke. He had confessed the truth to me on the day Alyssa mentioned her fiancé was coming over. Actually, I wasn't switched to remote work, I was laid off. So, I can't prepare any money. That's why he asked me to cover the wedding expenses. I pondered it, and even though we had finally become a family, I agreed. And to uphold his dignity, I let him pass the money through his hands. That's a lie. Dad was laid off? And there's no way someone on a pension could have prepared $30,000. She couldn't believe that her father was actually a laid-off old man. First of all, I'm not old enough to receive a pension. I'm in my 50s. There's no way I could be receiving a pension yet. I never thought they could be this ignorant. Besides, I happen to be an executive, you know? Saying that, Alyssa looked at me dumbfounded. Actually, I am a managing director. I have climbed to this position by contributing significantly to the company. That can't be. If our sister hadn't been earning, you two wouldn't have been able to live at all. While saying this, my sister showed her a web page where I was introduced as an executive. Seeing that, Alyssa ran out of arguments and seemed to be lost for words. She opened and closed her mouth for a while, then looked down, turning pale. So, let's get this divorce over with quickly, shall we? With that, I handed the divorce papers to Frank. After comparing my face with the divorce papers for a few seconds, he suddenly knelt down. I'm truly sorry. You're all I have. I'll cut ties with Alyssa too. Huh. What are you saying? At Frank's words, Alyssa screamed. And then, a parent-child argument began between the two of them. And something inside me snapped. Just submit it now. Don't waste any more of my time. Yelling that, both of their bodies stiffened. I've endured your abuse for far too long. I handled all the household and work. And what were you two doing? Who's the useless one here? I declared, and their faces turned pale. Despite that, my anger did not subside. All you need to do is submitting this divorce form. And never bother me again. Got it? Just do it. Yes, yes. Under my glare, Frank shakily received the divorce papers. Alyssa was completely intimidated. Debbie has always been scary when she gets angry. My brother muttered, watching the two. And so, Frank and I officially divorced. Thanks to him, I got the compensation without a hitch. Make sure to thank him. Got it. But as a punishment for not consulting us sooner, you owe us dinner next time. Of course, that's fair. Thanks to my sister's live-in partner, we successfully recovered the compensation. Afterwards, it seems Frank and Alyssa had a huge fight. Without me as a common enemy, their relationship quickly deteriorated to its worst. They blamed each other, and it escalated into a full-blown argument with objects flying around. However, neither of them had any money left. Their savings were depleted due to the compensation. and the cost of replacing the furniture and appliances I took with me. So, what happened to those two? It seems they tried to separate but failed. Alyssa apparently tried to rely on friends to get away from Frank. However, those friends had witnessed her behavior towards me at the wedding. You said your stepmom was harassing you, but it was the other way around. You're the worst. She was cut off and left without any help. Frank's parents had already passed away, so he had no one else to turn to. Reluctantly, they continued to live together. Meanwhile, Frank tried to seek help from his ex-wife. Of course, she refused him entry. She literally sent him away. I did some digging, and it turns out his ex-wife didn't leave because of an affair. Oh, really? According to my sister's research, the divorce wasn't the ex-wife's fault but rather Frank's. It seems Frank had treated his ex-wife in the same way Alyssa treated me. Consequently, his ex-wife used her family and friends to get a divorce in a hurry. Rather than abandoning Alyssa, she was rejected by her mother due to her collusion in mistreating me. So, he twisted the story to make it convenient for himself, fooling everyone around him. Frank was laid off because it was discovered he had been harassing subordinates and shirking his responsibilities. Frank really knows how to deceive people. If it weren't for my family's help, I might have ended up being rumored as the cruel stepmother who harassed her stepchild. I wish I had known all this sooner. Well, sister, what are you going to do now? Think about remarrying? No, I think I'll live freely on my own for a while. Maybe I was too hasty in wanting to be like my parents or to build a lovely family like my brothers. That's how I ended up with someone like Frank. For now, living freely on my own seems like a good idea. Unlike them, I have plenty of money. By the way, Brian was confessed to by one of the friends who attended the wedding. Oh, that's nice. Being young must be wonderful. Brian started dating the friend who confessed to him. When Alyssa found out, she reportedly had a meltdown. Since Brian is a good kid, much like his sister-in-law, I hope he finds happiness this time. Yes, it's a beautiful day. Shall we go for a walk? Saying that, I called out to my indoor dog, Lucky, who energetically responded. Since then, I had decided to keep a dog. Lucky, who adores me purely, brings me comfort every day. My parents are also smitten with Lucky, taking care of him during the day when I'm at work. Right, I also need to buy a wedding gift. Brian was soon to marry the girl who confessed to him. She is genuinely a good person, and everyone feels relieved. My brother said with a smile, it's finally settling down. He and his wife can now continue to live their sweet life together. His wife blushed and playfully hit him on the shoulder. But her embarrassed face showed she didn't really mind. I guess there was no need to rush into marriage. This kind of life suits me better. Muttering so, I prepared for the walk as Lucky eagerly nudged me. This walk might lead to a new encounter, potentially building a truly happy home this time.
Hey. How are you doing? Wait a minute. Where are you right now? A week had passed since my husband and in-laws moved without telling me anything. That's when I got the call. Huh? Why do I have to say such things? Are you stupid? What do you mean by that? Seriously, what a noisy woman. I'll forgive you if you apologize. Also, if you work as a housekeeper, I'll even give you the keys to the house. How about that? Isn't it a good proposal? I couldn't help but sigh at the absurdity. Who would do such a thing? For someone useless like you. Isn't that more like you? Huh? How dare you? I could hear my husband talking to someone over the phone. Huh? Yes, I understand. It was probably. My mom wants to talk. Without my consent, he handed the phone to his mother. Hello, can you hear me? I can hear you, but... Oh, you were alive. What did you say? Because you are unemployed now, right? I've heard about it. You really deceived me, what a scummy woman. My husband had lied to his mother to protect his pride. Who really is the scum here? I thought. What should I do? Why are you silent? Say something quickly? Hearing those words made my blood rush to my head. It's bad to say, but I'll teach this misunderstanding old woman over the phone the truth about my husband. It seems you are mistaken, so let me tell you the truth, it wasn't me who got fired. It looks bad now. Isn't that more on your side? Huh? Such nonsense. It seemed like the irritation of my mother-in-law would not stop. I'm not joking. After all, the luxury you've been living in is thanks to me. Enough already. I never thought the conversation would be this incomprehensible. No matter how much more time I spend telling the truth, she wouldn't listen. That's when I made up my mind. Then, I'll divorce your unemployed good-for-nothing son. Huh? Do you understand what you're saying? Even if you do that, you're the one who will suffer. Don't worry. Rather, you should be the one worried. This is not going anywhere. If you're going to hang up, you might want to ask about the firing. As I said that, the call ended. About 5 minutes later, my husband called again. Probably after talking to his mother. However, I did not answer the phone. I thought. Now, let them suffer a bit more. And I waited for the opportunity. Thanks to that, what awaited my husband and in-laws was not just hell. I am Ashley, and my siblings have been running a company passed down from our grandfather. My brother Phil is the president, and my sister Emma is an executive. As for me, I am the manager of several apartment buildings inherited from my father. I have enough income just from the rent. I met Joey when I was 33 years old. The catalyst was my sister Emma. Sister, isn't it about time you got married? Huh? What's this all of a sudden? You're at a good age, so I thought it's about time. How can I get married when there's no one? Leave that to me. A week later, my sister introduced me to Joey, a friend from her university days. My first impression was that he was a well-groomed young man. As someone who had only focused on work, I didn't know what to talk about. Then, have fun just the two of you. Wait, Emma. My sister left laughing. Left alone, I realized he was younger than me since he was a friend of my sister's. I thought. I, as the older one, need to be responsible. Shall we go then? Yes. Both of us, still nervous, entered a nearby restaurant. We ordered drinks and gulped them down immediately. Thanks to that, it seemed like our tension eased. I'm sorry about today. Emma did it on her own. No, it's fine. Actually, I wanted to meet you. Huh? You mean? Actually, I've heard about you from Emma. She's been talking about you ever since college. That girl really. According to Joey, Emma had been bragging about me a lot. We spent about 2 hours together and then decided to part ways for the day. See you then? Ah, wait. Can I have your contact if it's okay? Right. We haven't exchanged it yet. Thus, we exchanged contact information and started going on regular dates. So when are you going to get married, big sis? It's too soon. Not really. How long have you been dating? About 6 months? Then, there's no problem, right? You think it's someone else's problem. In fact, Joey confessed to me a week after Emma introduced us. I was surprised, but it didn't feel bad. I accepted his confession. And 6 months passed. I had been thinking about getting married eventually, but I hesitated to bring it up myself. Since I am older, I thought it might pressure him. One day, while I was thinking about this, I have something important to discuss today. Understood. I'll meet you at the usual place after work. Then, see you later. The call was during lunch break, and I could hardly concentrate on my work for the rest of the afternoon. It's no wonder. Nobody would not be conscious after hearing such things. That day, I was proposed to. I was somewhat prepared, but when actually asked to marry him, I wondered if I really was the right person. So, what's your answer? Please take care of me. However, what followed was challenging. The next thing was to greet the parents. Both of my parents warmly welcomed our marriage. Only the greeting to my in-laws was left. However, what about greeting your parents? About that. Yes? Joey's expression was dark. It even seemed like he didn't want to go. I have a little request. I want you to keep quiet about your job. What do you mean? It's fine with my father, but my mother. According to Joey, my mother-in-law had a weirdly high pride and believed that it was unthinkable for a wife to earn more than her husband. Apparently, his late grandmother also had such a personality, and she had thoroughly inherited it. So please, adjust the story a bit. Joey pleaded. When he did that, I couldn't say no, but I was anxious. It's okay to hide it, but can we keep it hidden forever? I think it will be okay. He didn't explain specifically at that time, but I had no choice but to trust his words. And a week later, we went to his parents' house. Are you okay? I'm getting a bit nervous. I'm here with you. And just as we discussed beforehand. I know. When Joey pressed the doorbell, my mother-in-law came to greet us. Good of you to come. Come in. Thank you for having us. We were led to the living room, where the father-in-law was waiting. Good you came. Take a seat. Yes. I glanced sideways, and Joey seemed to be nervous too. We came because I have an important talk. I intend to marry Ashley. I see. Ashley, do you work? I anticipated such a question. In the preliminary discussion, we decided I would say I'm doing clerical work through a temp agency. It wasn't all a lie, as I occasionally helped out at my brother's company. That's why we decided on that. Currently, I am doing clerical work. I see. What does your father think? It should be fine. So, it's okay for us to get married, right? Yes. There's no reason to oppose. Thank you. While making small talk, I went to the bathroom. When I was about to return to the living room. Wait a moment. Yes. I thought it was unfortunate to meet her at such a place. What is that? What do you mean? Wearing something that looks so expensive. She was pointing at the necklace. This is. As you're going to be a wife from now on, you don't need such things. Take it off right here, right now. Excuse me? Shall I take it off for you? My mother-in-law tried to snatch my necklace. It's okay. I can do it myself. I immediately took off the necklace. It was actually a birthday present from Joey. I tried to explain it several times, but it seemed that my mother-in-law took it as an excuse. Also, I don't like your outfit either. Showing so much leg. It's indecent. I wondered why I had to be criticized to this extent. Perhaps thinking I was taking too long, Joey came to see what was happening. What are you doing here? We were just talking. We'll be back soon. Okay. Understood. My mother-in-law interrupted me. Remember what I just said. I'll be coming over regularly to check up. What do you say? I understand. I had no right to refuse at that moment. Rather, I was just too exhausted from being unilaterally criticized. I returned to the living room, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything wrong and be criticized. Is something wrong? It's nothing. I blamed Joey in my mind, but it wouldn't help to show that attitude towards him. I just wanted to leave his house as soon as possible. I don't quite remember what was discussed afterward. Thus, we got a provisional approval and returned to Joey's house. For now, we need to look for a house for us to live in together. Yes. We went to look at properties, but I couldn't get my mother-in-law's words out of my head. Before I knew it, I had signed the lease in my name. I hadn't thought this would lead to a major problem later. Thus, we became husband and wife, but the smooth sailing was only at the beginning. For now, let's keep it hidden from my mom. Can we really do that? It'll be fine. Joey's baseless confidence only made me anxious, and it became a reality. We tried to avoid dealing with the in-laws as much as possible. A month after we got married, I came home from work to unexpectedly find my mother-in-law there. Mother. Why are you here? Well, I came to check on you. What were you doing until this time? I was at work. But you're a secretary, right? Isn't it too late even for that? I looked at Joey, and he was shaking his head sideways. It seemed he wanted me to keep hiding it. I had to work overtime today. Saying that, did you really just go out and come back late? I did not do such a thing. I wonder. Mom, that's enough. But. Anyway, we are doing fine without any problems. With that word from Joey, my mother-in-law reluctantly left. Sorry. I didn't expect her to come to the house. Maybe we should tell her the truth? It's okay. Leave it to me. But essentially, we are deceiving her. Enough. Don't say the same thing over and over. Was it necessary for me to be told so much? Despite being newly married, I gradually began to distrust Joey. However, there was a good aspect. Whether Joey's words had an effect or not, my mother-in-law stopped coming over. I thought I could finally relax, but I felt a further anomaly one day at noon. Huh? Why are Joey's shoes here? I cautiously entered the house. Then I found Joey lying on the sofa, drinking alcohol. What are you doing? Whoa. Apparently surprised, he dropped the can of beer he was holding. Why are you here? I came back because I forgot something. More importantly, what happened to your work? I wasn't feeling well, so I left early. But you seem to be drinking. Does that mean you're cured? Look. They say alcohol is the best medicine. Even so, you seem to be drinking quite a bit? Looking at the table, there were already 6 empty beer cans. That's supposed to be in moderation, right? I think drinking too much defeats the purpose. Joey fell silent. I went to the bedroom to fetch the document I had forgotten. Glancing at the living room, despite my earlier caution, he was now gulping down sake. Come on, stop it. Huh? Isn't it about time you didn't have time for this? I'll ask you in detail when I get back. Take care. I really wanted to question him thoroughly right then, but as Joey said, I didn't have the time. Is something bothering you? No, not really. You look down, just like Phil said. Sorry. I'm really fine. Could it be something with Joey? Why would you think that? Just a feeling. I guess that's the only thing I can think of. I didn't know what to say. Let's focus on work for now. Yeah. Right. After work, we siblings gathered. So? What's troubling you? You don't have to tell anyone else. So feel free to talk. Thank you. Here, I explained about my mother-in-law and Joey's current situation. That's. Sorry. I had no idea it had come to that. It's not your fault, Emma. But what will you do now? Should I talk to him? That might just make things worse. Didn't we just agree to keep this between us? Maybe, but I was touched that they had thought it through so much. For now, I'll try talking to him in more detail. That sounds good. I'm here to help whenever you need. Thank you for that. After this conversation, I returned home. However, Joey was not there. The alcohol had been neatly cleaned up. I thought. Where has he gone? I tried calling him, but there was no response. Joey didn't return until the next morning. Where have you been? I just went to my parents' house. Mom suddenly called me. What's so funny about that? Huh? You didn't answer your phone, and you really went to your parents? You could have at least called, right? What are you trying to say? If that's what you think, why don't you call my mom? Don't say such nonsense. Since it was already time to leave for work, I left the house. When I arrived at the office, I got a call from my mother-in-law. Hello? What do you think you've done? I don't follow. You doubted Joey? Because he didn't answer his phone. Getting angry over that. You really are petty. My mother-in-law continued to berate me afterward. She even went so far as to call me useless. I couldn't stand being insulted anymore and snapped back. There's no reason for me to be spoken to like that. What did you say? Please don't say such nonsense. I have work, so I'm going now. I unilaterally ended the call. Having held back until now, I felt a great sense of relief. Feeling a sense of accomplishment for getting through the day, I returned home where Joey had some harsh words for me. I heard you said something terrible to my mom. It wasn't terrible. I just said what was obvious. Don't joke around. What do you think of someone's parents? Then you shouldn't do things that make you suspicious. Fine. I have my own ideas then. Saying this, he started making a call while laughing. After the call, Joey said, "Look forward to it." The situation took a sudden turn 3 days later. What's going on? Boxes were continuously brought into the house. Confused and stunned, I went outside, where Joey appeared with his parents. Why are you so surprised? I told you to look forward to it. We'll be in your care from now on. I just follow what Mom says. That's when I understood everything. Without telling me, Joey had planned for us to live together. That was what the phone call was about. Isn't this a bit tyrannical? Why? Joey suggested we live together because he's worried about us. He's really a wonderful son. But there's no room available. That's strange. Joey told us 2 rooms were available, right? Those 2 rooms were intended for when we had children, not for living with his parents. However, since the moving of belongings was already completed, there was nothing I could do. From this day on, my life would become a nightmare. Is breakfast not ready yet? It's way too early for that. That's none of our concern. If I had overslept it would be another story, but it was only 5 a.m. at this point. From that day on, I started waking up at 4 a.m. This was just the beginning. However, something happened that made me decide to take revenge on Joey and his family. I ended up doing all the household chores. It wasn't that I wanted to. It was because no one else would do it. I thought I would break down if this continued, so I consulted my brothers again. What the hell is that? That's just unacceptable. Leave it to us. My brothers came to our house after work. They were there to speak their minds to Joey and his family. Huh? Brother? And Emma, what are you doing here? We heard you've been doing whatever you want? I would never do such a thing. Really? We heard you just moved in without asking. And you leave all the household chores to Ashley. That's not true. There was a misunderstanding. Anyway, leave this matter to me. I'll explain everything to our parents. So he says. That's fine, right? I had relied on my brothers, but I couldn't trouble them any more than this. That's fine. We're counting on you then. The in-laws were out for the day. I don't know what would have happened if they had been home. You really did something unnecessary. You shouldn't have done this from the start. Aren't you embarrassed to rely on your siblings? While Joey and I were arguing, his parents came back. What's all this noise? We could hear you outside. Listen, Ashley went and told her brothers. Tattling? Yes. She's making us out to be the bad guys. The audacity of a daughter-in-law. Actually, aren't you the ones at fault? Moving in without permission. Not doing anything around the house. That's only natural. Apparently, some punishment is necessary. Then Joey seemed to have an idea. It would be trouble if they come over again. Ah. I've got a great idea. Joey whispered to his mother. That's a good idea. Your siblings run a company, right? Yes, but if that company gets a bad reputation, it would be a disaster, right? It might even go under. What are you thinking? This is what I mean. Saying this, Joey showed me his smartphone. On the screen was false information about my brother's company. If you listen to us, we'll leave this as is. But if you do something unnecessary again, you're going to spread that online? Exactly. So don't ever do something like this again. It was essentially a threat. I had no choice but to comply to protect my brothers. However, Joey's tyranny wasn't just that. One day when his parents weren't around. I think you've realized, but I quit my job. Did you really quit by yourself? What are you implying? Just curious. At this point, it doesn't matter, does it? Yeah, you're right. Like you said, I got fired. Why? Various reasons. It's not important. I thought I had heard something useful. And don't you dare tell my parents. Why not? Isn't it obvious? Well, what are we going to do about living expenses now? Joey fell silent. Well, I guess I'll have to figure it out. I've been doing so up until now anyway. You might have forgotten, but I've been paying the rent and living expenses. Just don't do anything unnecessary. Months passed, and to Joey and his family, I was nearly a slave. I could only despair about how long this would continue. Today, there was an important meeting at my brother's company, so I was there. The meeting lasted until the evening, and I didn't get home until after 8 p.m. As soon as I arrived, I noticed something was off. There was no sign of anyone. The moment I entered the house, I was speechless. It was clearly desolate. I thought, could it be? I checked each room, but all the belongings were gone. I sat down on the spot, overwhelmed. I called my brother. What's up? Can you come to the house right now? Got it. I'll be there soon. About 30 minutes later, my brother arrived with my sister. What the hell happened here? There's nothing here. They moved out without telling me. Seriously, why would they do something like this? Huh? What's this? What's wrong? There's something on the table. What? What my brother found was a note apparently written by Joey. It read, "We are fine without you." So, we decided to move out. Thanks for the cash in the drawer, it was helpful. What's this about cash in the drawer? I hurried to the bedroom to check the dresser. The money I had hidden there was all gone. Could it be gone? They took everything. It had contained nearly $10,000. I messed up. I never thought they'd notice. But what are we going to do now? Although my brother asked that, I couldn't think of anything immediately. However, my sister's words reminded me of something important. But why do something like this? What's the benefit of doing all this? What do you mean? I mean, it's like being handed a divorce notice, isn't it? That's right. That's exactly right. What? Thank you. Huh? Oh, yeah. The situation of Joey and his parents leaving was actually an unexpected opportunity for me. Are you smirking? Yeah. It's kind of scary. Can I talk to you both for a moment? I then shared my plans with them. There's a lot I want to ask, but if Ashley has decided, then it's fine. I know I introduced you to Joey, but just go ahead and do what you need to. At that time, I deliberately chose not to contact them myself. Considering Joey's character, I was sure they would contact me first. So, I waited. It was a week after Joey and his parents had left. Hey. How are you doing? As I expected, Joey called. Wait a minute. Where are you right now? Huh? Why do I have to say such things? Are you stupid? What do you mean by that? Seriously, what a noisy woman. I'll forgive you if you apologize. Also, if you work as a housekeeper, I'll even give you the keys to the house. How about that? Isn't it a good proposal? I couldn't help but sigh at the absurdity. Who would do such a thing? For someone useless like you. Isn't that more like you? Huh? How dare you? I could hear Joey talking to someone over the phone. Huh? Yes, I understand. It was probably. My mom wants to talk. Without my consent, he handed the phone to his mother. Hello, can you hear me? I can hear you, but... Oh, you were alive. What did you say? Because, you are unemployed now, right? I've heard about it. You really deceived me, what a scummy woman. Joey had lied to his mother to protect his pride. Who really is the scum here? I thought. What should I do? Why are you silent? Say something quickly? Hearing those words made my blood rush to my head. It's bad to say, but I'll teach this misunderstanding old woman over the phone. The truth about Joey. It seems you are mistaken, so let me tell you the truth, it wasn't me who got fired. Huh? What are you talking about? It looks bad now. Isn't that more on your side? Huh? Such nonsense. It seemed like the irritation of my mother-in-law would not stop. I'm not joking. After all, the luxury you've been living in is thanks to me. Enough already. I never thought the conversation would be this incomprehensible. No matter how much more time I spend telling the truth, she wouldn't listen. That's when I made up my mind. Then, I'll divorce your unemployed good-for-nothing son. Huh? Do you understand what you're saying? Even if you do that, you're the one who will suffer. Don't worry. Rather, you should be the one worried. This is not going anywhere. If you're going to hang up, you might want to ask about the firing. As I said that, the call ended. About 5 minutes later, Joey called again. Probably after talking to his mother. However, I did not answer the phone. I thought. Now, let them suffer a bit more. And I waited for the opportunity. Thanks to that, what awaited Joey and his in-laws was not just hell. A month later, Joey contacted me again. Of course, I had been making various preparations during this month. I have nothing to talk to you about. Wait. Won't you live with me? Why? Why, you ask? Shall I guess? It's probably because you're after money? I absolutely refuse. You left on your own responsibility, so good luck. Don't say things like that. Aren't we close? You might have heard from your mother, but I intend to divorce you. What? That's just how it is. Don't contact me anymore. I thought it was over, but it wasn't that simple. The next day, Joey came to the house with his parents. Again? It's not like that. I've heard everything from Joey. And? I'm really sorry. Look, Joey, apologize. I'm really sorry. Can we start over? Isn't that a bit too convenient for you? I know that. But still, I'm asking you. How foolish can he be? No matter how much he apologizes, I have no intention of forgiving him. Sorry, but that's impossible. Please leave. If things continue like this, I won't be able to survive. But you took money from the house, right? Did you really use it all up? I used it all up on moving expenses and such. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh right. There's something I need to give you. Wait here. What is it? I went to the living room, grabbed something, and returned to the entrance. Here you go. What I handed Joey was a divorce form. This is. You can see what it is. It's a divorce form. There's no way this can be accepted. He then tore it up into pieces. Do you realize what you're doing? Joey. I will never agree to a divorce. Well, that's fine. Either way, I was thinking of consulting a lawyer. Can you leave for now? This conversation isn't over. Either way, if you keep making a scene, we can't live together. Let's just go home for today. Wait. Joey was practically dragged away by his parents. I then went to consult a lawyer introduced by my brother. There was still one final touch left to do. That was a close one. Thank you. Is everything really okay now? Yes. It's safer to handle the divorce through a lawyer. But I have a favor to ask? If there's anything I can do, just tell me. Actually, I asked my brother to help me find a new house. It turned out he knew someone who owned a real estate business. I quickly signed the contract and moved to the new house. Of course, I didn't tell Joey anything. Well, there was no reason to. As expected, Joey called soon after. Did you go to the house by any chance? Where are you now? Like I'd tell you. I had been hearing about Joey's situation through Emma. It seems he's still unemployed and living with his parents. Now that it has come to this, his parents will have to work as well. Considering how stubborn my mother-in-law is, it's unlikely she could handle a real job. Also, I heard you're still unemployed. Why do you know that? I won't tell you that. What? And please tell your mother to hang in there. By now, Joey and his parents will continue to face more challenges. Meanwhile, I'm living freely in my new home. And I've welcomed a new family member. I started raising a Chihuahua, something I had wanted to buy for a long time. For me, this little one is enough. From now on, I will live my life with this little companion.